We're finally in Chapter 8, Sudden Conversion of the Manipulated Mind by Denise Wynn. One is rarely accused of being brainwashed if, after a lifetime of agnosticism or political inertia, one suddenly embraces Catholicism or joins the Labor Party. However, if one's new allegiance involves contravention of all conventional morality or diversion from societal norms, it is questioned whether it could have been adopted of free will. So one may choose to become a Catholic, but the Moonies choose you. That the latter choice merely represents a more vivid confluence of the kinds of psychological forces so far discussed is rarely considered. But the conversion process can be broken down into its component parts in much the same way that the experts dissected the brainwashing experience in Korea. In the course of this chapter, 3 recent celebrated cases of conversion, all of which led to court cases where the word brainwashing was bandied freely by either the prosecution or the defense, will be used to illustrate the ingredients of religious and political conversion. Many of those ingredients have been highlighted by various authors. Zimbardo, in Influencing Attitudes and Changing Behavior, establishes 4 influencing events to pay attention to in the context of sudden religious conversions. First, a close personal relationship needs to be developed with the people one wishes to convert to one's own position. It is human to respond to the offer of caring from another individual, to respond especially if affection-starved and disoriented, to the tempting welcome into the bosom of a strong and loving family. Second, the arousal of emotions by the leader, whether by emotional speeches, rhythmic music, or dancing, serves to stir up troubling deep guilt and fear feelings in the audience, which can be relieved quickly by submission to the cause. Third, by responding to the appeal to come forward, to make promises, or to speak out and be counted, people can be coaxed to commit themselves by actions which they may then, as has been shown, color their consequent attitudes. Last, says Zimbardo, comes the powerful influence of prayer. The act of prayer may serve many purposes in this context. It binds the group, acts as a reminder of the initial emotions experienced during the conversion itself, reinforces belief, and by focusing on the power of supernatural force to bring good or evil, serves to place an individual's total responsibility for his actions outside himself. Prayer can bring peace, just as confession for Dr. Vincent brought relief from all the aroused guilt, uncertainty, and identity confusion he experienced in his Chinese prison. Whatever else may exist, in the essence of prayer, prayer as a form is an effective instrument for manipulation. Sargent has seen evangelical type conversion as a prime example of what can happen when the brain reaches overload and succumbs to a surfeit of stress. At the sermons of Wesley, for instance, it was a regular occurrence for people to collapse as the mass hysteria mounted and to rise saved. Wesley's hellfire speeches aroused the whole gamut of emotions in his audience, from guilt and fear to anger and indignation. It was irrelevant which. The result was physical collapse and an ensuing state of suggestibility which led to instant conversion. Sargent has a logical starting point for his discussions. Methods of religious conversion have hitherto been considered more from psychological and metaphysical angles than from physiological and physical ones, but techniques employed often approximate so closely to modern political techniques of brainwashing and thought control that each throws light on the mechanics of the other. Almost identical physiological and psychological phenomena may result from religious healing methods and conversion techniques equally in the most primitive and the more highly civilized cultures. They may be adduced as convincing proofs of the truth of whatever religious or philosophic beliefs are invoked. But since those beliefs are often logically irreconcilable with each other, and since the similarity of the physiological and psychological phenomena produced by their invocation are all that they may have in common, we find ourselves confronted with a mechanistic principle deserving the most careful examination. And they said this is from Battle for the Mind. Sargent may be alone in stressing the physiological side of conversion, but many authors support the importance of psychological factors in the conversion syndrome. Erich Hoffer, in The True Believer, makes the case that frustration is the key to understanding the sudden embrace of rigid religious belief, starting out from the fact that the frustrated predominate among the early adherents of all mass movements, and that they usually join of their own accord. It is assumed that an effective technique of conversion consists basically in the inculcation and fixation of proclivities and responses indigenous to the frustrated mind. Those who would transform a nation or the world cannot do so by breeding and captaining discontent, or by coercing people into a new way of life. They must know how to kindle and fan an extravagant hope. He explains why, in his view, faith offers so much to the frustrated. Faith in a holy cause is to a considerable extent a substitute for lost faith in ourselves. The less justified a man is in claiming excellence for his own self, the more ready he is to claim an excellence for his nation, his religion, his race, or his holy cause. Hoffer has mentioned, as quoted above, that the successful manipulator for a mass movement must play on those elements that are indigenous to the frustrated mind. He pursues that theme. Are the frustrated more easily indoctrinated than the non-frustrated? There is apparently some connection between dissatisfaction with oneself and a proneness to credulity. The urge to escape our real self is also an urge to escape the rational and the obvious. The refusal to see ourselves as we are develops a distaste for facts and cold logic. There is no hope for the frustrated in the actual and possible. Salvation can come to them only from the miraculous. They ask to be deceived. Effective propaganda, then, cannot be forced on closed minds. It can only work on what is already within. Rather than impose new opinions, propaganda works if it articulates forcefully and graphically nebulous passions and fears and resentments that are constantly simmering below consciousness. Whereas Sargent's version of events, with the accent on the physiological, allows the implantation of any ideas, however alien. Hoffer believes the seeds for fervent belief must have been already long sowed. And that is the end of the first part of this new chapter, Chapter 8, Sudden Conversion. And I will see you in the next part. We're reading from the Manipulated Mind, and we're winding it up. It's good stuff.